South Africa's legal and political tensions have taken another dramatic turn after a court dismissed an urgent attempt by the MK party to block the pension benefits of National Director of Public Prosecutions Shamila Batohi. The ruling marks a significant moment in an increasingly heated confrontation between political actors and the country's prosecuting authority. At the center of the case was an application brought by the Umkhonto Wesizwe party, which sought to prevent Batohi from receiving pension-related benefits, arguing that her leadership at the National Prosecuting Authority had failed to deliver accountability in high-profile corruption cases. But the court has now rejected that bid, and in doing so, it has reinforced key legal principles about independence, due process, and the limits of political intervention in state institutions. Here's what that means for South Africans. The case was not simply about pensions. It was about power, accountability, and the role of institutions in a constitutional democracy. The MK party's argument was rooted in growing public frustration over the pace of prosecutions, particularly following the findings of the Zondo Commission, which exposed widespread corruption during the era of state capture. Despite those findings, many South Africans have questioned why more high-level convictions have not followed, and that frustration has increasingly spilled into the political arena. The MK party, closely associated with former President Jacob Zuma, has been among the most vocal critics of the prosecuting authority. In its court application, the party argued that Batohi should not benefit financially from her position if the institution under her leadership had failed to meet public expectations. But the court took a different view. Legal experts say the dismissal reinforces a key constitutional principle that public officials cannot be penalized without clear legal grounds, due process, and established findings of wrongdoing. Experts warn that allowing such an application could have set a dangerous precedent. If courts begin to entertain politically driven attempts to interfere with employment benefits, one legal analyst explained, it risks undermining institutional independence. And that independence is critical, particularly for bodies like the National Prosecuting Authority, which is tasked with prosecuting corruption, organized crime, and high-level political cases. At the same time, the ruling does not erase the underlying concerns. Public confidence in the justice system remains fragile, and critics argue that delays in prosecuting corruption cases continue to damage trust in state institutions. The broader context is important. South Africa has spent years grappling with the legacy of state capture, a period marked by allegations of corruption, misuse of public funds, and political interference in key institutions. The National Prosecuting Authority has been central to efforts to rebuild accountability. Under Batohi's leadership, the NPA has prioritized rebuilding internal capacity, strengthening investigative units, and pursuing complex corruption cases. But progress has been slower than many expected. Opposition leaders argue that this slow pace reflects deeper structural challenges. These include limited resources, legal complexity, and the difficulty of prosecuting cases that often involve sophisticated financial networks. Civil society organizations, including watchdog groups, have echoed these concerns. They stress that while reform is underway, the justice system still faces significant capacity constraints. At the same time, legal experts caution against politicizing prosecutorial processes. Justice cannot be rushed for political convenience, but it must also be seen to be working. And that balance is at the heart of the current debate. On one side, there is growing demand for faster accountability. On the other, there is a need to protect institutions from political pressure. Meanwhile, the MK party has indicated that it will continue to challenge what it sees as failures within the justice system. The party has positioned itself as a strong critic of current governance structures, particularly as the country moves closer to the 2026 local government elections. Analysts say this legal challenge may have been as much about political messaging as it was about legal outcomes. Here's what to watch next. The focus now shifts back to the courts and the prosecuting authority. South Africans will be looking for tangible progress in high-profile cases. They will also be watching how political parties engage with legal institutions and whether those engagements strengthen or weaken public trust. Because ultimately, this case highlights a deeper issue: the tension between political accountability and institutional independence. And as South Africa continues to navigate that balance, one thing remains clear: the credibility of its justice system will be one of the most important factors shaping its democratic future.